Hello dear students, hope all of you are doing very well. Today's video I'm going to talk about the concept of history in the famous play A Dance of Forests by Wole Soyinka. Wole Soyinka, you all know, he was a Nigerian playwright and also an active thinker and theoretician of post-colonial writing. Wole Soyinka's The Dance of the Forests presents history not as a heroic or linear record of the past. Rather, he revisits history in terms of the past burden, crime, sin, and guilt, and he wrote the play for Nigerian independence celebration in the year 1960. So remember the occasion of the play. He wrote the play to celebrate the Nigerian independence celebration, and during the independence celebration generally a nation talks about the glorious past and they always want to learn from the past. But very interestingly, Swenka focuses on the past of the Africa, past of Nigeria particularly, where the past is not so glorious. Rather, the past carries the traces of guilt, sin, betrayal, and inhuman crime against humanity. So, as a postcolonial thinker, he believes it is necessary to revisit the past with a new consciousness so that from the past flaws, guilt, and past wrongs, the nation can rectify itself. It is evidently related to the concept of history. Here, Ulswenka presents history not as a past old records frozen into eternity. Rather, he represents history as a grand meta narrative which is based on lies, falsehoods, and official maneuvers. History means his story, the story told, the narrative recorded by the authority whoever is in power. Therefore, replacing the narratives of those who are in power can give us a true essence of the history, and this history is very different from the official documentary records of history. So Ulsoinka talks about the necessity to have a personal, subjective, honest look into the frozen past of the nation, where the past can give us authentic, original testimony to the sin, guilt, and errors committed against humanity by the nationalist readers. Here he presents history in terms of a cyclical process of repetition. First of all, we find the idea of time as la durée. La durée is the concept which introduces time as a cyclical time. Time is non-linear, time is not straightforward. In la durée, time moves continuously backward and forward. So the backward and forward movement of the time presents history as a process of circle or cycle. Wole Soyinka espouses this concept of cyclical narrative of history, and he points out how in Nigeria the past is intertwined with the present. The coexistence of past and present creates an important look into the history, where history is not only glorious but also history talks about the wrongs, misdeeds, and the crime of humanity. So Soinka challenges the idea that independence marks a clear break from the past. Through the return of the dead man and the woman in the play, history is shown to be an unresolved burden and drama of guilt, sin, and betrayal. So it is never ever a glorious memory for the Nigerians. The same pattern of violence, betrayal, cruelty, abuse of power repeat across generations. The living characters are revealed to be reincarnations or moral doubts of their historical predecessors, suggesting that societies inherit not only traditions but also ethical failures. So, the presence of the dead spirits among the living beings in the play, focusing on the moral ambiguity at the same time, the inability of the nation to get rid of its horrible past that is filled with trauma, violence, and crime against humanity. The second important concept of history we find in the play is rejection of the glory of the history. The forest head's decision to send unpleasant ancestors instead of noble, glorious dead spirits exposes the hypocrisy of the land. Soyinka critiques nationalist narratives that selectively celebrate history while suppressing its darker or malicious sides. The ancestors who appear, they are not saviors, but they are reminders of the human suffering caused by historical injustices. History, in this sense, becomes a moral reckoning rather than a source of pride. History here comes as a moral responsibility. That is the most important point that Wole Soyinka pointed out. In his narrative, history is not a past fact which we should not expose. Rather, he is keen on excavating the buried past of Nigeria so that the sin, betrayal, guilt, and historical injustices can cause us open to acceptance. We can accept the nation and the citizens, all of them who are involved in the misdeed against humanity. So, based on the past fault, historical blunders, the nation and the citizens should learn how to rectify themselves. So, history comes here, revisiting history comes here rather as a moral lesson which is teaching us how to rectify ourselves, how to rejuvenate ourselves to build a better future for humanity and for the nation at large. At the same time, he talks about myth and history's intersection. That is very important. He revives the dance performance in the forest, he revives the use of mask, the typical Nigerian music, etc., so that the ancestors of the land can clearly represent the true spirit of the nation to the present generation. He blends Yoruba cosmology with historical reflection, suggesting that African history cannot be understood through Western linear understanding of history. Rather, African history is very much intertwined with its past, with its myth, with its ritual and folklore. So, in order to understand African history, we need to focus on proper understanding of its root. The root of African history remains within its cultural tradition, myth, rituals, etc. Therefore, he calls for a renewal of interest in African indigenous cultural tradition. If we understand that only, then we will be able to appreciate the history of the nation. And the next important point is critique of post colonial amnesia. Amnesia means simply forgetfulness. He said the play warns the new nation can risk repeating colonial and pre colonial operations if they forget the lessons of history. So Swenka said history has the power to teach us, rectify us, and encourage us to build a better nation. So he implies is history is hollow without historical self-examination. The celebratory festival in the play contrasts sharply with the disturbing revelations from the past, highlighting the danger of collective amnesia. So he said the living characters Adenobi Dimoki, Ovinzi, Madame Rola, all are representatives of the historical injustices and past. They have reincarnated, but still they carry the seed of crime and the ability to do some misdeed against humanity. And they are not ready to accept their past as it was. So, the refusal to accept one's past and to learn from the past itself is a great red flag. So, Soinka talks about the necessity to rectify ourselves so that we can revisit the past and learn lessons from our future, from our past misdeeds. So, he talks about the necessity to revisit history and not to forget the lessons we learn from them. So, in summary, we can conclude the lecture by the understanding that here in the play The Dance of Forests, history is neither nostalgic nor glorious. Rather, it is uncomfortable, burdened with sin, crime, punishment, and it is a continuous haunting reminder to the present characters about their horrible past which they cannot get rid of. Swenka urges societies to confront their past truthfully, honestly, and frankly. The honest confession of their past guilt can redeem them, and the redemption is much needed to construct a better society built on humanity, understanding, and sympathy for everybody. Here, the critique of history that is presented in the play, that is essentially post-colonial in nature, because in post-colonial agenda the aim of the theoretician or the writer is to revisit history. Post-colonialism means after colonialism. So after colonialism, what happened to the land, what happened to the people? That history needs to be excavated, because here history appears as a great moral teacher who is teaching us, shaping us, guiding us how to rectify ourselves, how to upgrade ourselves in order to be a citizen of a country which is based on the ethical human values and proper understanding. I hope this lecture will be helpful for you to write answers and to understand the play in a better way. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you like the video, please do like, share this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more similar updates. Stay tuned. Thank you. Have a nice day.